what I wanted to, what I wanted my career to be focused on. And now I'm here. It's just a very short summary of my pathway. But yeah, that's us. And I'm just going to start talking a little bit about what the Energy Coalition is. So we are a nonprofit, and our mission is to empower communities to leap into the future of clean energy. We envision a future in which communities produce clean energy that is affordable and accessible for everyone. And this means bringing ideas, technology, and infrastructure to communities, public agencies, business, educators, policymakers, and more. We really want to help create the building blocks for a new energy economy and basically empower communities to become their own energy producing network, so that clean energy is, like I said, affordable and accessible for everyone. These are our 4 facets at the Energy Coalition. We work on program design and project implementation, education and workforce development, marketing and outreach, and policy and master planning. And then this is just a really nice snapshot of basically an overview of what tech has accomplished. We have 63 staff members across 4 offices in California, in Oakland, Los Angeles, Irvine, and San Diego. And altogether, we have about 462 combined years in the energy industry, so lots of energy experts that Natalie and I work with. In 2019, we managed to achieve an 18 million kWh kilowatt hour energy reduction through our programs, and we're able to serve 218 public agencies. And then the logos at the bottom are just an example of the types of clients we work with. So you can see we work a lot with public agencies and utility partners and cities. And just some examples of projects that we've worked on with these types of partners are providing marketing and outreach services for community choice aggregations, partnering with California energy industry partners to drive decarbonation and resilience in California communities, launching energy awareness campaigns with agency employees. That one's usually really fun. Providing education and sustainable curriculum offerings for California educators, and then also providing energy efficiency project management services for public agencies. So we do a little bit of everything at Tech, but Natalie and I are going to focus on 2 of our biggest and longest running programs at the Energy Coalition. So I will pass it back to Natalie to talk about SoCalREN.
Thanks, Benita. As I mentioned before, I primarily support the Southern California Regional Energy Network, also known as SoCalREN. So I'm going to tell you a bit more about what that means. SoCalREN is the largest program that the Energy Coalition supports. It is an institution that provides free technical support for energy projects to public agencies across our service territory in Southern California. And I know that's a bit of a mouthful, so I'll break that down for you. First of all, what are public agencies? These are local government institutions like cities, counties, school districts, or water districts. And these entities own facilities, so think city halls, public libraries, school buildings, and these buildings use a lot of energy. So our job is to come in and help them figure out how to save energy, which of course saves them money and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. We save energy through a variety of energy efficiency projects, like replacing streetlights with LED lamps, or making air conditioning more efficient, or installing smart controls so that they can optimize their scheduling. And over time, all of these changes add up to a lot of savings. We have 155 agencies enrolled with us, and these agencies save over $7 million every year in energy costs. And they also save over 60 million kilowatt hours, which is the equivalent in GHG emissions of taking over 9,000 cars off of the road every single year. So next we're going to look at why we focus on public agencies and how this ties into environmental justice. So SoCalREN was created because there are all of these opportunities and of course this urgency to save energy, but agencies weren't able to take advantage of these opportunities because of some barriers to access that they face. Many of the agencies that we work with lack capacity to implement sustainability projects, even when they know it will save them money in the long run. They might just not have enough staff to work on them, or their staff don't have enough time. And a lot of times they lack the budget to pay for the project upfront. The energy efficiency projects usually pay for themselves within just a few years because they make the utility bill cheaper. But if an agency doesn't have the money to pay for it up front, then they're stuck using inefficient equipment, paying higher bills, and emitting more carbon. So in these cases, we kind of act like free extra staff for a city because they don't have to pay for our support. We also offer financing options so that they can afford to buy whatever equipment or labor for installation that they need. So most of the agencies that we work with face some of these barriers. However, there are some agencies that face even higher barriers, and we classify these as disadvantaged communities. SoCalREN defines a disadvantaged community by leveraging this tool on the right, which some of you all might have heard of, called SoCalREN 3.0. This tool incorporates geographic, socioeconomic, public health, and environmental hazard criteria to give each census tract in the state of California a score. The higher the score, the higher the burden that this tract bears. And we see that areas with less income, less education, and a higher percentage of non-white population usually correlates with higher levels of environmental pollution. So things like bad air quality, proximity to hazards, etc. The bottom line is that disadvantaged communities are less resourced, even as they carry more than their share of the environmental burden. So how do we address this at SoCalREN? Starting in 2019, SoCalREN offers a program specifically for agencies that serve disadvantaged communities. We go a step further than just offering energy efficiency services. We also offer what we call distributed energy resource services. And that just means that we help identify opportunities for things like solar, battery storage, electric vehicles, EV charging. And we are also able to waive some fees associated with financing options and offer enhanced benchmarking, which is just measuring how much energy that a facility is consuming so that we can know which areas to target for maximum savings. So SoCalEnviroScreen is really a phenomenal tool for environmental justice, and it helps us understand the kinds of problems that the communities that we serve are facing. But we also want to be sure that we aren't just seeing numbers when we look at the communities that we serve. We know it's really important to humanize these communities so that the services that we provide are actually in alignment with what the community wants and needs. And we're going to talk more about the ways that we're working on that through our environmental justice planning. But first, I'm going to hand it back to Vanita to share a bit about our education and training programs.
Thanks, Natalie. So moving on to our education programs, and the reason why we're highlighting this is one of the programs that we work on at the Energy Coalition is because it is one of our most long-running programs. Actually, it's the longest running programs. It's been around since the 80s, and it is actually the program that I started working on when I was at Tech. I did not originally start in communications and marketing at the Energy Coalition, but I really was interested in education, and that's why I accepted a Climate Corps position with them. So a little bit about our education programs. A lot of our curricula and materials that we develop for students are rooted in sustainability and energy. And you can see here that we have our student energy actions. Actions is an acronym for actions that students can take to basically be empowered to make an impact in their home schools and communities every day. So we have A as adjust your time of use, C, care for our air, T, turn it off, I, initiate change, O, oppose water waste, N, nurture the planet, and S, shape the future. And the whole philosophy behind our student energy actions is to not depress students about climate change and the state of our world, because we know it's depressing as adults, we know. But we don't want, some students we work with as young as kindergarten, and we don't want their first bit of knowledge about sustainability and earth to be that our world is doomed. We want them to feel empowered to do something about it. I know that when I first learned about it in college, taking that class, I felt very freaked out, and that's probably why I added my minor on so quickly so that I could study more about it. But we don't want our students to feel that way. So yeah, we want students to feel like they're the owners of their futures and basically will be the next generation to help us meet these challenges that we're facing. And even though the primary audience for all of our curriculum is students, we mainly work with educators. So we are not usually the ones directly bringing our materials to the students. We train educators in our materials, and then they take that and deliver them into their classrooms. So what do educators receive? They usually receive a standards aligned curriculum about topics such as water energy nexus, waste, transportation, urban gardening, and renewable resources. These are no cost to any educator that enrolls any schools or any environmental educations. We also work with after school organizations, science museums, basically anyone that teaches students. It also includes a science toolkit. That order of words was not correct. It also includes science materials in a toolkit. And then we also like to embed environmental STEM career connections within every lesson so that students are aware of the type of careers that they can take in the environmental STEM field. And through us working with these oh no.
I'm just gonna read the slide. Vanita, and they're doing some fire alarm training, so feel free to jump back in if it is Vanita. But I think these are the educational barriers that we seek to address through these programs. A lack of required sustainability curricula in schools, limited resources for educators, limited science teaching experience in informal and traditional education groups. Schools.
Okay, it stopped. Wait, I should have warned everyone. I'm sorry if it destroyed your ears, but my apartment just decided to do fire alarm testing right before I came on to this presentation. So I thought, oh, great, of course. But I mean, we're all working from home. We get it. Okay, so I think I'll just start from the top of the slide, Natalie, but thank you for trying to take over. And I really apologize, everyone. Okay, so through these programs, we found that we're meeting a lot of educational barriers that educators face, such as lack of required sustainability curricula in schools, limited resources for educators, limited science teaching experience in informal and traditional educator groups. Also, schools are disproportionately funded based on income, wealth in their area. And students have varying access to internet. Recently, we found that we've had to adapt some of our lessons so that they can be printable and just dropped off at a student's house so that they don't have to worry about internet access or making sure that, I don't know, a teacher would have to teach it live to them. A lot of our lessons, our newer lessons can be followed independently by the student so they can still get some learning. But yeah, basically educators really just want materials to boost their science and sustainability learning whenever possible. I remember I was talking to science specialist in a district a few years ago, and she mentioned to me that she only had $150 of budget for the entire year to teach science in 2 schools. So she had multiple classes in 2 years and $150 budget. And I feel like when I was buying school supplies in grade school, that was how much I spent in a year for just one student. So we're really happy to be able to provide these materials to educators at no cost, because they need help wherever they can get. Next slide. And then we also try to address equity and access in our programs, because we know that there are different types of student learners, such as adjusting curriculum to reflect student audiences with various accessibility and disability levels. We don't like to assume in our curriculum that everyone has like a house, or that they have parents, or that they can jump up and down to do a specific energy dance in our curriculum. So we really try to modify it to make sure that a variety of students can participate in the learning. And then we also customize our services to fit communities' needs. So there is a base package of education resources that we do provide to educators, but it's not like we give it to them up front without kind of asking them what they need. First, we figure out what they need, and then we kind of see how our materials fit with however their classroom is structured. And then community knowledge sharing. So we've started some programs where we're pairing up with high school students to teach them how to teach our lessons to elementary school kids. So that's really fun for the younger students, because they get to be taught by someone other than their teacher. And then it's just a great experience for the older high school students. And then right now we are really boosting our gap analysis to identify low income and environmentally disadvantaged communities for targeting schools that we want to outreach to. So that was a little bit about our education programs. And then I am going to pass it back to Natalie to talk about some new plans that the Energy Coalition has related to environmental justice.
Thanks, yeah. So Vanita and I both touched on kind of how the Energy Coalition has been working for a long time in these spaces of equity and access, and really just in the environmental justice space. And it's always been implicit in our mission and in our operations. But this summer, we had a chance to renew and kind of rename that commitment as part of this nationwide reckoning on racism. And I know I don't have to remind anyone of the events of this summer because they're still ongoing. And but we think it's important to ground this conversation in that recognition, because it was a spark for us to reevaluate. We are once again seeing these horrific public examples of police brutality against Black men and women, including George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many others. And there was and still is a sweeping call across the nation for individuals and organizations alike to reflect on and address how we have contributed to systemic racism. So in May, the Energy Coalition released a statement of solidarity with this movement, much like those that many organizations released around this time. And in the following days and weeks, it became clear that many of our employees were really yearning for a deeper conversation and meaningful action around racism and anti-Blackness and how it relates to our work at the Energy Coalition. This bubbled up in the form of lots of employees all across the company talking to their supervisors and asking for this conversation. And we wanted to emphasize that here, especially on a webinar or with an audience where we have a lot of students, because a lot of us at the company that were asking for this, which included Vanita and myself, are young and in entry positions, but we were able to find power in our collective voice on this issue. And our leadership chose to listen and embrace that request. And by June, the organization had announced that we would all be talking about this together as a company, with the goal of renewing and expanding our commitment to environmental justice and equity, both internally and externally. So what did that look like? We started kind of just in conversation with each other about where we were at as an organization and what we could do better. And this conversation took place in the form of a month-long series in July, in which speakers from all across the organization, from executives to project coordinators, presented on a wide range of environmental justice topics, everything from gentrification to community resilience to internal hiring policies. And during this initial series, it became more and more clear that a lot of employees had a lot of ideas about how we could improve our programs by emphasizing equity in our work. And so by the end of that series of conversations, we had a new goal of creating an environmental justice strategic plan to guide our organization going forward. And Vanita is going to speak a bit to how that plan was structured, but I just wanted to touch on a few things within that process. One of them was, it was really important that everyone's input was and still is being taken into account through a process of collective generation. So we have 3 working groups focused on different areas within our country, or I'm sorry, within our company, and everyone in the company is involved in one of those working groups. And beyond even the formation of this strategic plan, we've also been seeing environmental justice become a more explicit part of our work through ongoing conversations. It's a topic that people present on in company-wide meetings. People are sharing news and articles related to justice, equity, and access in our Slack channels. And it's something that people are drawing connections to in their work on a regular basis. So I'll pass it on to Vanita to talk more about the strategic planning process.
So this is kind of an overview, a very simplified overview of kind of the process we are going through to create an action plan. And it's just to give everyone here kind of an idea of how plans are created in organizations like ours. So we have our 3 work groups at the top: communications, education, engagement, and implementation. And then the first step is to identify the problem statements we are trying to meet within the company, and then to prioritize goals that would meet those problems, and then identify strategies that we will actually execute to help us meet those goals. And then lastly, what metrics are we going to quantify that means we were successful in executing those strategies, and in turn meeting those goals, and in turn addressing those issues. So this is just kind of to give everyone an overview of what process we are working at. And then lastly, these aren't finalized, but these are just some types of outcomes that we want to incorporate into the plan, such as internal education and staff training, modifications to our programs, equity assessments, making sure that we are serving communities that need our resources the most, and then emphasizing on increasing partnerships with community-based organizations. And so that is just an overview of what tech is working on. This is no means a quick process. It's a several-month process, and it will go into next year, but just to give everyone a picture of what we are looking at. And with that, that is the end of our presentation. Those are our email addresses. If anyone here wants to reach out to us at any time, I'm happy to talk about anything that I've discussed, or I'm sure Natalie is too. So yeah, feel free to email us and reach out. And I believe it is question time, Chloe. She's nodding, yes.
Yes. Hi, thank you so much for that presentation. It was just wonderful. Thank you. Also, like, you guys did a great job of accommodating that fire alarm. You still ended on time. I'm very impressed. So thanks for all of that. Yeah, I would love to open it up to questions. There's only 6 of us on here right now. if anyone wants to put anything in the chat, or if anyone would like to unmute and ask a question, that is totally fine. I definitely have a couple of questions for you guys. I'm trying to figure out how to turn my timer off. Okay, we're good. And I will pull up my questions, but in the meantime, if you guys want to take a minute to think, please go ahead. Okay. All right. Okay, cool. So I've got a couple questions for you guys. Were there any big kind of lessons you learned when you were sort of like mapping out this environmental justice integration plan? Like when you were doing these working groups and that kind of thing, was there like a best practice in place besides maybe, or something that you guys have developed maybe outside of just that map? Was there anything like interesting or stand out about the process that like you wouldn't have expected? Was it a lot more difficult on an emotional level, on a professional level than you thought, or like how was that whole process?
I think the biggest takeaway from this entire process was that every single employee had something to say, and we don't know what everyone's like political backgrounds are, what their affiliations are, but we all pretty much kind of collectively wanted to support this plan. And right now, our organization is extremely busy, and on top of a pandemic, and everyone is volunteering their time to help us put this together. So I think that was one of the biggest surprises that I saw, just that everyone had something to contribute and they were willing to put in the time and squeeze in 30 minutes, an hour here to kind of all meet together and discuss.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think a cool part of that, especially in like the lead up to deciding to create this environmental justice strategic plan, was connecting with different folks in different parts of the company. Like Vanita, I had never worked with her on anything before this EJ planning process, but now we're both part of this planning team, and getting kind of understanding like some of the like cross-cutting goals and like how our different programs can inform each other has been really cool, and getting closer to different people in different parts of the organization that are focused on these issues.
That's awesome. That sounds like kind of the ideal outcome in these situations. I don't know that every company is going to be lucky enough to have that sort of collaborative environment on this, but that's really cool and really good to hear. And so I was kind of curious. I know a lot of your educational programs are sort of, I think they're geared towards K-12. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, I didn't mention that, did I? Currently our education programs are geared to K through 8, but we are looking to expand to high school, and we do partner with colleges.
Okay, cool. So on that note, what are the best ways for community college students to partner or get involved with tech?
Yeah, so we have a few ways on our education programs. We have this program called the Field Educator program, where we kind of essentially train college students in how to teach our lessons to elementary students. We pair them with students that we already serve, and then they just kind of guest teach a fun lesson. We provide all the materials. I mean, virtually would be done over Zoom this time, but in the past, we've given them like a toolkit of things, some prizes to give away to students, so that it's kind of like a fun assembly event for the kids. And then we are always accepting volunteers if anyone wants to help us and just kind of gain experience in this field in related to sustainability and energy and education. We do have like rotating internships in the summer. But I'm sure that if anyone reached out now, it's not really up to me to decide, but that my program manager would have some openings if anyone wanted to dedicate their time to supporting our education initiatives.
Natalie, are there any opportunities on like the project side, or is volunteering mostly like in regards to like education initiatives and that kind of thing?
I think that volunteering definitely mostly takes place on the education initiatives. I will say, I know we've mentioned Climate Corps several times on this call, but you know, Benita and I and Chloe have all been or are part of this program, and Tech has hired several Climate Corps fellows in the past, and a lot of times their scope of work is split between education and like some engagement work with our SoCalREN side. So that's definitely an opportunity to get more into the project work, I would say.
And I was wondering if you guys might have like advice or suggested resources for students who are like interested learning about maybe like energy equity and resilience in particular, or like looking to start making their way into that sector. If there's anything generally that you would want to share with someone who's just starting to learn about this stuff, that would be awesome to know.
Let me think about that. Getting into the energy sector. I mean, one of the biggest, I'm not sure how available this is to everyone, but there's the American, what is that acronym, Natalie? AV?
Oh, water.
It's like,
Or wait, is it a women's group?
like Association of Women
In
in
energy.
in water, energy, and the environment.
Yeah.
That is a really great group that Tech has been a part of for a long time, and they do a lot of workshops related to energy and water and just careers. And
There's
yeah, go
also,
ahead.
I know a lot of us at Tech actually like help or were put in touch with the Energy Coalition through the USGBC, which stands for the US Green Building Council Emerging Professional Group. So the Energy Coalition hosted, back when we had in-person meetings, hosted some of those meetings. And that's how some of our current employees, especially younger folks, found out about it. But it's also a good resource for finding out about other job opportunities. Also, the Living Building Challenge, they just renamed themselves. It's called LFLA, Living Future, the Living Future Institute, the LA chapter, at least last year was pretty active. And I used to go to, when I was like trying to find a job, I went to some of their networking events and met really cool people who are more in like environmental design and like energy, net zero energy in buildings. So that's another cool, if you're in the LA area, a good resource to check out.
Yeah, and just one more thing. This isn't, I believe there's a cost associated with this, but getting your LEED certification. A lot of folks on our staff have that. Like, it's kind of just a really basic thing that a lot of our project managers have. So if you especially are interested in getting into the energy field, that's like a really good thing to have just as a baseline.
I will add in there for anyone who's transferring to a four-year university, sometimes they'll have associations or student groups in school. They're like renewable energy associations or like green building or engineering programs, like clubs basically, that will sometimes finance your LEED AP exam. I got certified for free, which was super cool.
Nice.
I was a student at UCLA. So like, one, it's always a really good idea to get involved in those student organizations. to, like, if it's not to make friends, there's that fun incentive where you get connected to these cool programs sometimes. So highly suggest. I had one more question for you, and I don't know that. Oh, what would be a good action item for students at home right now? It could be like an energy saving thing. It could be, you know, like go vote, like all these different things. If you're gonna give someone something to do, like safe from home type thing right now, you can give different things. Like, I'm curious, what are your suggestions?
Definitely register to vote. Make sure I know it's really hot, so what we've been kind of recommending folks to do and students to do is to pre-cool their homes and apartments before 4 p.m. or before 3 p.m. when the most energy is being used. And then that should last you hopefully to the night. I know it's really hot, but that's a pretty relevant recommendation right now.
What is pre-cooling
So
mean?
that means like running your air conditioner earlier on in the day, because I'm sure you notice that when you do run your AC, it does keep it cool for a good few hours after that. Yeah.
Natalie, do you have any action items?
That pretty much covers it. Definitely check your registration status, even if you think you're registered to vote.
Okay, awesome. Unless anyone else has any questions, I think that will probably mark the end of our Q&A. So I'm actually gonna stop recording. Okay,